Indian classical music is one of the oldest styles in the world. It's more than 4,000, 5,000 years old. Actually, how it started, Indian classical music was the source of meditation. It was not originally in this form as you have heard just now. In Samaved, the Vedic hymns was sung, and it's connected with Indian philosophy. They say Nad Brahma, sound is God. So much importance is given to sound. Nad means sound and Brahma means God. The very creation of this world, how the world started, according to our philosophy, it was with the sound. And then we have got two kinds of nad, as anahat nad and ahat nad. Anahat, this is a Sanskrit word. Anahat nad means a sound which is created without any effort. And ahat nad means a sound which is created with some effort. For example, there is sound in the air, in the universe, in the waterfalls. That's a different kind of sound. Ahat nad, now for instance, this is a sound. But this is not a musical sound. In musical terminology, we consider a sound which has got a particular type of vibrations. So the difference between one sound and the other sound, between one note and another note, there's a specific difference. So that is how we differentiate between a musical sound and unmusical sound. And the old people in India used to meditate through music. That is how it started. And meditation was for self-realization. And music was one of the fields, one of the medium. It was a part of yoga, so to say, where it was very easier to meditate. And that is one of the reasons that this music has been all through individual performer. It developed into this form. And that was the source that the old yogis or people who wanted to meditate, they took music as one of its way of doing it. And then in Vedic hymns, we had originally 3 notes only. And later on, as time passed, there were different research about it. Musicologists, they started trying to find out an art form out of this meditative style. And we got 7 notes. And then finally the 12 notes, major and minor. And then other styles, different styles were created, Jati Gan, after Vedic hymns. And then the style which is still very much respected and source of inspiration to the modern day musicians also was Dhrupad style. So this is a centuries past when people started working on it, creating new styles, and we got Rag and Tal. And this music became a very, very highly developed form of art. And improvisation was the main thing. This music is improvised, and improvisation based on certain principles, certain discipline. So in the Dhrupad style, we used to improvise based on melodies and rhythmic cycles. But the style was, it was very straight and simple. For example, a rag, when a vocalist used to sing, he used to develop it into alap first before singing the composition. And afterwards, when the composition was sung, there was no ornamentation. It was only playing with the rhythm. And Dhrupad style was popular during Tansen's days, who had been a very, very learned and legendary musician who actually brought Indian classical music from the temples, so to say, to the courts, to the elite listeners. And he was a disciple of Swami Haridas, who was not actually performing in public. But from Tansen, this music came into public and became a performing art. He was the first musician who got so much popularity and established this style of singing. And then afterwards, we got Gharanas. Gharana means school of music, because after Tansen, the disciples of Tansen, they carried on the same tradition. And then we had different schools. Each individual musician tried to give his own impression, his own style, his own personality into this music. And afterwards, Dhrupad style was there, but later on, another style of music was invented called Khayal. Indian classical music has been mostly based on vocal music. And during the Dhrupad period, the instruments were also like that, which were more accessible in that style, like veena and pakhavach for accompaniment. When Khayal style came, then what was the difference between Dhrupad and Khayal? As I said earlier, in Dhrupad, the ornamentation, what we call tan, different styles of singing in a different tempos, were not there in Dhrupad style. But in Khayal Gaiki, Khayal style of singing, the difference was a musician used to take one composition and the words, the poetry was not that important as his command over the vocal style of singing. And in Dhrupad, we had different gharanas. Same way, in Khayal Gaiki, there were different gharanas which developed in our country, school of music. And each school had got its distinct quality of expressing the same rag in different style, like Patiala Gharana, Agra Gharana, Kirana Gharana, Banaras. Later on, another style of music which was lighter in style, Thumri, came into practice. And Thumri was where the ornamentation of singing like Tan was not there, but it was more based on expression of words. And Dadra and Thumri, that was developed later on. So that was known as light classical form, in which the themes were mostly romantic, and it was more suitable for short performance, and there was no alap or improvisation of that kind as was in Khayal. Side by side, there was development of instruments, as during Dhrupad style we had veena, which used to be as an accompaniment with the Dhrupad singers in olden days. Later on, we had different other instruments like sitar, sarangi, sarod, and each instrument tried to reproduce the nuances of vocal, because this music has been based on vocal music. And sarangi is a bowed instrument which was considered more suitable for reproducing exactly the nuances of vocal style. And likewise, each instrument had its own style of reproducing the same thing. Sitar is the most popular instrument, and as we use plectrum in that to reproduce what is played on sarangi with the bow. Same way on the sarod, a plectrum is used, and in other instruments like shahnai, they are wind instruments. So we have different categories of instruments and different styles of vocal. Now, what is improvisation and what is rag? A rag is just not like a scale. Rag has got its discipline, its ascending and descending system. There are certain combinations of notes which are very, very important, which create that rag. And we have to follow that discipline throughout the improvisation. And this is one basic difference in our music and Western music, Western classical music. In Western classical music, we have got harmony and contour notes. In Indian classical music, it's all based on melody. We never change the tonic of a rag. And the improvisation is there, but improvisation is within a discipline. Sometimes we have got a rag, two different rags having the same scale, but their ascending and descending order is different, so that gives a different color to it and they become two different rags. And another most important thing is we call it vadi and samvadi. The most important note in that rag and the second important note. So all combinations of notes are based on such a way that some particular note is used the most. And if the scale even the same and the accent is different on the vadi and samvadi, that makes a different rag. In jazz music also there is improvisation, but the basic difference again comes when we are playing a rag. We have to follow the discipline. For instance, if we are playing a rag which has got 5 notes while ascending and 7 notes while descending, that discipline has got to be maintained all through. So this very factor, this style of our music gives it a very distinct quality of its own, that we improvise, but the improvisation has got to be followed in a particular discipline. Now, about percussion instruments, as you see here, tabla. This is the most popular instrument from our country. We had different kinds of percussion instruments. During olden days, when Dhrupad style was in vogue, which is still sung, but not as many performers are there as khayal singers are there. With Dhrupad style, we had pakhavaj. And tabla is actually came out of pakhavaj, and it's a very, very dynamic instrument. The only instrument of its kind which has got a spoken language. Whatever we can play on that instrument can be recited. And there are different compositions, beautiful compositions. There are two styles of tabla. One is solo playing and one is accompaniment. When a tabla player is performing as solo, you can have a performance for 1 hour, and there will be no repetition of compositions. There are different compositions which can be improvised, and while accompanying, the tabla player gives a support to the main instrumentalist or vocalist or a dancer, and that is according to the style of the performer, and he has to play according to that. So it's a very, very specialized percussion instrument. And before I proceed further to other things, I would have some demonstration. We have got different gharanas of tabla in India: Punjab Gharana, Delhi Gharana, school of tabla, then Farrukhabad, then Ajrada, Banaras. We have got very, very famous tabla player from Punjab Gharana, Zakir Hussain. Everybody knows about that. So how this instrument is used: we have got different rhythmic cycles. First, certain syllables, how they are produced on this instrument. There are certain syllables which are produced with the right hand, certain with the left hand, and certain are combined together. As right hand drum ta, tit, na, tin. Left kat, ghe. Now combine dha, 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 tit, dhare, dhare, kete tak, dhadre, kete tak, dhadre, kete tak, dhadre, kete tak, dha. So this is the language of tabla. As we have got sargam, notes in music, tabla has got its own language. Now we have got different rhythmic cycles. Rhythmic cycles, there are hundreds of rhythmic cycles, but we have got few which the musicians have mastered, so to say, and they perform in that. Most important rhythmic cycle is Teen Tal, 16-beat rhythmic cycle, and Zakir will play that. I'll just count the beats: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Tha, din, din, tha, tha, din, din, tha, tha, din, din, tha, tha, din, din, tha. After 16 beats, we come to the first beat, which is known as sum, which is the very, very important thing in our music, because when we improvise within this rhythmic cycle, and when we start certain other variations of tempo, rhythm, when we come back to the main first beat, that is the beauty of it, how we come to that. So we have got other different rhythmic cycle, 10-beat rhythmic cycle, for instance, Jhaptal, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Din, na, din, din, na, din, na, din, din, na. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there are different rhythmic cycles, and there are different variations of tempo when we will play something together. So you'll come to know how we improvise in that. Now this instrument, Santoor, the name of this instrument is Santoor. We have got different instruments in our country, and I would like to tell you something, how the instruments started, how the idea of creating instruments came. We'll have to go back to the Vedic period again. It is said during Vedic period there were 3 kinds of instruments: Venu, Veena, Dhundubhi. These are 3 different names. Venu means the flute, bamboo flute. Veena means a stringed instrument. Veena is a common word for stringed instruments. The kind of string instrument which was found during Vedic period was an instrument, a wooden box-like thing like this, and there was a special kind of dried grass which was used as strings, because in those days there was no metal strings were there. And dundubhi was an instrument which was actually a percussion instrument, but it was, for example, a pit was covered with animal skin, and they used to play it either with the strikers or with hands. Now the idea of creating an instrument, string instrument, came from the bow and arrow. Because when the arrow was released, it used to create a sound. And that gave an idea that a musical sound could be created. And the first instrument that was created was known as Pinaki Veena in our country. Pinak in Sanskrit language means the bow, and Veena means a string instrument. Same instrument was called in the Western countries as the harp. And afterwards, we had different modifications in the same instrument, and different instruments came out of that. And this is an instrument which is actually of the same family from the harp. As you see, there's a wooden box, there are small bridges, we call them. And this instrument was called originally as Shata Tantri Veena, because the instrument had 100 strings. Originally there were 25 bridges, each bridge having 4 strings, and those 4 strings were tuned in one note. Like that. And for playing, we have got these 2 wooden mallets. So in our country we had different instruments. They were there, but they were being used in different styles of music. As I said, in Vedic period there was that instrument. Maybe that was just played with the Vedic hymns or that kind of music. As this music was being evolved in different forms and styles, the instruments also picked up the different styles. So certain instruments like bamboo flute, shehnai, they were not used in Indian classical style, what Indian classical music is today, but they were in folk music. Likewise, this instrument also remained there, but was played in a different style of music in northern part of India, and that style of music is known Sufiyana Mausiki. Indian classical music had a lot to share with Persian music. There were a lot of cultural exchanges and influences. And one very important part of our music is that this music has got so many other influences, and it evolved, and it still remained a discipline, taking different forms, different styles from different fields, but still retaining its own individuality and its own distinct character. So this Kashmiri music also had some influence of Persian music and Turkish music and Sufism. And this instrument was only used in that kind of music till my father and Guru, who had an extensive research about this instrument and brought it to Indian classical style. And I modified the instrument later on and tried to give it a particular type of tonal quality and style of playing, which is distinct style of Santoor, how we can reproduce the same kind of music on this instrument through these mallets. Sometimes, as I said, we have got one scale, but how we play it in ascending and descending order, that becomes 2 different ragas. I'll just demonstrate that. This instrument is called tanpura. This is a drone instrument which is played in every kind of music, whether it's vocal or instrumental, to keep the drone, the tonic. Now these 3 strings are tuned in the tonic. The rest of the 2 strings are tuned according to rag. Now in this scale, the 3rd note is flat and the 7th note is flat. In North Indian music, we have got 10 main scales. Out of that, we have got different ragas. Now this scale is known as Kafi Thaat, we call it Thaat. Now, using the same scale but changing the ascending and descending order, we can get 2 different rags. First is this rag is known as Bhimpalasi. In this, we omit the 2nd note and the 6th note while ascending. And while descending, all the 7 notes are used. I'll just play one composition in this rag. the same scale, the third flat and the seventh flat, but changing the ascending and descending order, we'll get a different rag. Combination of notes is very, very important in our music. Now, this is our tonic, sa. dha dha ni sa dha ni sa ma ga re sa. Now this phrase itself differentiates it from Bhimpalasi. In Bhimpalasi, ni sa ga ma pa ni da pa ma ga re sa ni sa ma. Now this combination of note and this on this one ascending, we are avoiding fifth note and second note. And while fifth note is being used, but in a very particular way, not straight, not like this. Now I'm going to play one composition in Bhageshwari in 3 tal, 16 beat rhythmic cycle.